आपादमौलिपर्यन्तां गुरूणामाकृतिं स्मरेतेन विघ्नप्रणश्यन्ति सिद्धन्ति च मनोरथाः लक्ष्मीतनुतनितरामितरानपेक्षमङ्गृद्वयं निगमशिखा प्रवालं भैरम्बमम्बुरुहडम्बरचौर्यनिघ्रं विघ्नाद्रिभेदशतधारधुरन्धरन्नः स्वागतम to the positive psychology session for the 18th shloka. So we saw in the samskara there is the concept of para and apara. Now, when we talk about something, the vibheda bhedakam, something that differentiates, we first need to understand the concept of local reality. This local reality is not entirely a concept of positive psychology. But in terms of positive psychology, also, it helps to understand what is this local reality. It is something that is subjective or unique to a person's perspective. For example, I have my own um, experiences that influence my way of thinking. In terms of humans, also, I have explained what local reality is. But when we are talking about emotions in particular, the way I process a certain emotion is hugely based on my experience. Maybe I'm not that expressive. Maybe I do not process certain kind of emotion very well. Maybe a certain kind of expression is very rare, so therefore I've not dealt with it. These kind of things. But what naturally what we need to understand is a person's way of processing a certain emotion is unique to that person. And this is extremely important. Now, it is heavily influenced by it heavily influences the way we process information also. Like for example, I had already mentioned when we talk about Rama's decision uh, at the beginning or just before the start of this text, we are talking about judging that particular act immediately. We tend to do that. Now, when we do that, we are playing roles. That means our experience is going to be, because I have played the role of a son at many a point of time. So, when I look at the story where a pregnant Sita is exiled, more to think about, I would have judged it a little critically, etc., etc. So the roles that we have played also heavily influences our way of understanding, because quite frankly speaking, I don't think any of us would understand what being a king means. Raja, king, he was the king. Rama was a king of Ayodhya. So what Rajadharma is, nobody knows today, not even politicians. Yes, to some extent, they try to make it relevant, but nobody understands it. But we do understand what being a son means. We do understand what being a husband means. We do understand what being a wife means. We do understand what being a daughter means, etc., etc. So the roles that we have played, it has built certain kinds of emotional bonds. And therefore, when we process, we internalize, we personalize a certain information. So that is called as local reality. That is called as local reality. Now, whether local realities should be considered, should not be considered, it is not false. That is something that we need to understand. When we are going from apara to para, apara is not false. At least when we talk about it in terms of today's argument, to an extent of my environment, local reality is true. That means to today's society, to today's society and the society that I live and constantly interact with, whatever is perceived to be wrong, it is that way. I cannot contest it, because it matters as to what is the acceptance of that society, acceptance of the social claims. But when we move towards para, it is a very complex material where I have to think about something that is beyond my understanding. which itself is a very tricky question. So whether local reality is true or false, the concept of local reality is from physics, where we are trying to understand the forces of nature through our metrics. Like for example, I try to understand gravity through the force exerted, gravitational, the mass, etc., etc., etc. But as our perceptions change, local reality also changes, because we are able to involve more information, we are able to build more higher foundations. Therefore, local reality also changes. Even our thinking also changes after certain point of time, because our understanding of different things, different relationships, different emotions changes. Initially, when I'm subjected to a certain emotion, I might not be so calm about it. So my outburst will be a little more aggressive. But as I get used to that, it becomes I become desensitized to that emotion. Therefore, my reaction will not be the same way. Therefore, my understanding of that emotion is also different. So, in this way, local reality cannot be rejected outright, but local reality should not be fixated upon. That means we should not stick to that conclusion, whatever we have received. So it must change. It will change because personal values change. So there are different factors that is influencing local reality. First one is the personal values. That is the core principles, beliefs, like what our understanding of justice is. For example, the world doesn't run on justice. The world doesn't run on what is justified. It runs on what is justice. Like for example, there is some victim who has been harassed in some way, and that person goes to the court. And if the court allows, then the aggressors, the perpetrators must be punished to an extent where the victim says, yes, I have been served justice. But if we allow that to happen, what happens is they will try to seek revenge, not restoration of a normal state. So therefore, the world has to set a certain kind of principles, boundaries, where both parties, one person needn't be punished harshly to an extent where that creates one more cycle of karma, but it also serves as a some kind of compensation to the victim. So the world runs on what is justice, not what is justified. If we start acting on what is justified, then the victim will say, punish that person until and unless I say so, because ultimately I am the victim. I have been taken advantage of. I have been wronged. So until and unless I feel that that person has been punished well, you should not stop punishing him. Then another cycle of karma increases, because the person who had committed some wrong, if he is penalized more than a certain extent, people who are related to him, are connected to him, or he himself, there is an extent to which he can convince his conscience that this is something that I deserved. Beyond that, what happens? He starts to revolt. He starts to uh, act out. Like for example, there is an instance in Mahabharata, in the Kurukshetra war, where um, mm, Drupad is the father of Draupadi. Drupada, he is fighting from the Pandavas' end, and he meets Drona, Acharya Drona. So at that point of time, what happens? In there, they already had a history where Drupad had these two were classmates in the Gurukula. Drupad is a king and Dronacharya is a Brahmana, and Drupad had insulted Acharya Drona when he had sought some help, and therefore, when the Kuru princes were trained as a Guru Dakshina, um, Acharya Drona asks for his Guru Dakshina that they should defeat Drupad and bring him to Acharya Drona, and they do so. And Drupad realizes his mistake, and then he gives half his kingdom to Dronacharya, and Dronacharya he crowns Ashwathama as the king of that part half kingdom, and he becomes the Rajguru for the Kuru kingdom. And after that, Drupada's daughter Draupadi is married to the Pandavas, and then when we come to the Gita Sabha, where Draupadi is brought into the Sabha, and then she is Vastraparana happens. At that point of time, nobody tries to stop the Kuru princes, that is Duryodhana and Dushyasana, from insulting and harassing Draupadi, even though they are a part of that. That means they are there. Bhishma is also a part of the Dyutsabha. Acharya Drona is also a part of the Dyutsabha. They don't stop because they are the servants of the crown, and because of their dharma, they cannot go against what the crown has decided. Like that. That is their dharma, the limitations of their dharma. So it so happens that when Drupad meets Drona in Kurukshetra war, it so happens that Drupad questions Acharya Drona that for the sake of the insult, that is the initial insult, I have already sought your forgiveness. Um, I have already made amends to you. That is, I have given half my kingdom to your son, etc., etc. I thought there was no bad blood between us, but you proved that by uh, staying silent in a Dyutsabha where the daughter of your friend, your colleague, who is also like a daughter to you, when she is insulted, when she was disrobed, you stayed silent and you proved that you have not stuck to the nature of justice, but you have gone beyond that and tried to seek vengeance. This is his version of it. He's saying that Acharya Drona, in the absence of Drupad, because Drupad was his friend's daughter is like his daughter. So when she is insulted, when she is disrobed, he didn't say anything. He didn't object to all these things. So by his act, he has shown that he harbors some kind of vengeance. So this is wrong. That is Drupad, after his insult to Dronacharya, when he was defeated, I accepted my defeat. I even sought your forgiveness. I had asked you to forgive me. I had even made amends. I had given half my kingdom to your son. Despite all these things, you did not forgive me. That's a different thing. You did not forgive me. That's a personal thing. But then you sought revenge by your act. This is not the level of justice. It is going beyond that. Justice is when a person does something out of some mistake, then he seeks forgiveness, then if he feels paschatapa, then he should be forgiven. When he does amends, it should be accepted. But you said it is accepted and you took all this thing, you took the amends, and now you have done an act by not objecting to what happened in the Dyut Sabha. You have created a cycle where you have sought vengeance against me. Therefore, you have reached another level of karma, another cycle of karma, where you are seeking vengeance. So now I have to act against it. That means the level initially what happened, Drupada was at fault, and it was Acharya Drona who was trying to seek justice. He is in the higher plane. When Drupad asks for forgiveness, they are at the same plane. When he accepts and etc., when there is a sandhi, when there is some kind of truce between them, acceptance of all the, all is forgiven, etc., etc., that happens. They are at the same plane. But by not objecting to disrobing Draupadi in the Dyutsabha, what Acharya Drona has done, he has created another cycle where at this point of time he is actually in the wrong. Now Drupada is the victim. He has to seek justice. So now what is justice is that I attack you, I avenge you. So this, the other cycle, it starts, and he starts attacking Acharya Drona for that reason specifically. And Acharya Drona understands the nature and he takes it. That is, he doesn't fight him. He takes the this thing, the arrows and all that. He not surrenders at that point of time. He lets Drupad attack him to an extent where he feels it is justified. So the world, it has to be to an extent of what is justice, not what is justified. If we go towards that, then what happens is it creates different cycles of karmas which will never end. So local reality has this problem where it is heavily influenced by personal values, but if we allow those things to completely give that perception, then what we will do is we will stick to certain something. And but the nature of local reality is that it changes with any new information that we get. Therefore it is important for us to understand that justice is different from what is justified. Justified is local reality. Today I feel I have to avenge, then that overbears on somebody else, and then it brings about one more action which is something else is justified now. It is like a seesaw. So local reality is like that. So that is personal values heavily influence local reality. And the other one is emotional state. The best person to explain what the emotional state is Krishna only. Because Krishna doesn't get angry at any point of things. Because he is way above these kind of Arishad Vargas. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't have to get angry. But at one point of time in the battlefield, when Bhishma Pitamaha, he makes this pratigna that either I will end the Pandavas, or I will make Krishna take up arms. That means Krishna had made an or taken an oath that he will never touch. He will not take up arms in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He says either I will make Krishna break his oath, or I will end all the Pandavas. He doesn't get angry. Krishna doesn't get angry, but he realizes that until and unless Bhishma Pitamaha's oath is fulfilled, he will not end. And he is also, Bhishma Pitamaha is a very ardent devotee of Vishnu, Narayana, because Parashurama himself is his guru. So, to fulfill the oath of a bhakta, he takes up a wheel and then he turns it into a chakra. And Bhishma obviously recognizes that to fulfill my oath, uh, he has broken his own oath. So the state of emotion is very important to understand which is better, which is higher. The point is that Obviously, Krishna could have paid more attention to keeping up his oath, but he chose not to do that because he knew against Bhishma Pitamaha, the Pandavas would not stand a chance. So therefore, he had to protect the dharma ultimately. So therefore, he changes. This is another nature of local reality, where I'm saying something is dharma that changes in certain context. Dharma can also be para and apara. Paradharma is not up to us. That is up to Narayana, who sustains everybody. That is the reason he only says Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. But when it comes to our own dharma, see, it changes. From a Kshatriya, it changes to a Vaishya, it changes to a Brahmana, it changes to a Shudra. It is all very perspective wise. It is all limited to the um, profession, karma, gunas, etc., etc. And the nature of the emotional state that influences local reality is that with the emotional clarity, emotional intelligence, a change in the emotional intelligence, local reality also changes the nature, the result also, because there are cognitive biases associated with it. As my cognition of an emotion changes, the way I process that emotion changes, local reality also changes. So this past experiences, I've already said that these are the internal factors that fuel local reality. And there are some external factors also. External factors are very simple. Desha Kala Patra. Desha, that is the social context. Kala, that is the uh, time context. And then Patra, that is our relative participation in that. So relative participation also, again, there is a story of Krishna being Ranachod. Ranachod means one who ran away from the battlefield. Kalyavan. There is a demon called Kalyavan who can uh, burn and destroy anybody who comes to fight him, who stands in front of him. Like Bhasmasura. Bhasmasura also, that is a very this thing. So Krishna has to ultimately leave the battlefield, run away from the battlefield. That doesn't mean he doesn't know how to destroy some people. In terms of Kshatra Dharma, this is a very cowardly thing to do. Running away from a battlefield is the biggest adharma that kshatriya can do. But here the point is to win the battle, not anything else. So local reality is the perceptions that we have. They were binded. That is, Acharya Drona, Bhishma Pitamaha were binded by what is local reality in Jyota Sabha. That is the reason they did not speak up. They felt that their affiliation and servitude to the throne of Hastinapura is their biggest dharma as against the Paradharma, that is greater justice. So, what again, justified justice. So, there the difference occurs. So, local reality, the nature is that it changes. It is not that it is not true. It needed for daily mundane activities. Guiding us through routinely activities, it is needed. But in certain cases, we need to understand the nature of local reality is that it changes with increase in knowledge. That is what we need to understand. That is the reason in the shlokas, it says, once jnana occurs, ajnana cannot reoccur because we have built a higher level of knowledge. So that ajnana, being that association with the deha, it doesn't occur once again. This is the importance. So this characteristics of this local reality is that it can be very subjective from one person to another person, from context to another context. So it can be changes and it is dynamic, constantly evolving. And it is multifaceted. Multifaceted because various different parts are influencing it. There is emotions, there is cognitive, there's cognition, understanding a particular context. Then there is social relevance. So today, there was one news about a village somewhere in a far off country. I don't want to name the country, where uh, girl infants, their feet, their toes would be closed like this, and their they would tie a cloth around it since infancy, such that when they grow up like that only, and when they remove it, they are not able to stand up, and this is done to make the girl child more dependent. This has also happened today. It is so cruel, but the reality is that it did happen. Some people actually thought that this is a good way of taking away the independence of a girl child. So today everybody accepts it is cruel, but there was a time where they felt it was justified. That is the reason the world doesn't run on what is justified. If we allow that to happen, the world will end. It depends on what is justice. So that has to go on. So this is context dependent. There are too many multifaceted, as in there are too many factors involved which defines local reality. But the underlying principle is that it should be those principles that we understand. Time relevance again. Today we don't understand why such things happen. There was a time where something was normal. Such things were normal, like that. So now, with respect to positive psychology, why these things understand, why these things are important, or local reality is important, is that we need to have empathy and understanding for this. Why is simply because my local reality is different from another person's local reality. That means my understanding of something is different from another person's understanding of something. Empathy is the only way where I can understand what that person is feeling, which is nothing but building a new or a better or a higher knowledge base, understanding the something in another person's view, same context itself. So that this is important. Building empathy, knowing the concept of local reality is important to building empathy. And we need to always focus on what we can control, what we cannot control, what the nature of our perception is. These things needs to be understood. So, what are its applications? How does how can local reality be understood or applied? It is usually applied for therapy, coaching, education, community development. There are certain communities who have become so used to being ill-treated that they themselves have built a certain kind of inferiority complex. So, getting rid of those. So these kind of things are important. Their local reality needs to be changed. That means that they need to be made aware of a better knowledge base. That's the reason awareness comes first before any kind of change, changing local reality. So for positive emotion, also any kind of emotion, to bring it to positive, we need to first gain empathy, and then we need to accept it, only then local reality. These are the two elements that help us change local reality to a better positive emotion. So that is the reason this becomes very relevant in positive psychology. With this, we end the positive psychology session for 18th shloka. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः प्रतिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महीमहीषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यो शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि।